Sarah Martinez had always thought her cat Luna was a bit unusual. The sleek black feline had appeared at her doorstep 3 years ago during a thunderstorm, soaking wet and meowing pitifully. Unlike other cats, Luna never seemed interested in typical cat toys or regular cat food. She preferred to hunt at night and often disappeared for days at a time, returning with strange scratches on her paws and an odd shimmer to her dark fur. Living alone in her small cottage on the edge of Willowbrook Forest, Sarah enjoyed Luna's independent nature. As a freelance graphic designer, she worked from home and appreciated having a companion who didn't demand constant attention. Luna would curl up near her computer during the day, purring softly while Sarah worked on her latest projects. On that particular Tuesday morning in late October, Sarah was editing a logo design when she heard Luna's distinctive meow from the back door. The sound was different somehow, more urgent and excited than usual. She saved her work and walked to the kitchen, expecting to find Luna with perhaps a mouse or bird, as cats often do. But when Sarah opened the back door, her coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. Luna stood proudly in the doorway, but she wasn't alone. Behind her were 4 tiny creatures that definitely weren't kittens. Each one was about the size of a hamster, with iridescent scales that caught the morning sunlight like tiny jewels. They had small wings folded against their backs, long tails that swished nervously, and bright, intelligent eyes that seemed far too knowing for such small creatures. Sarah rubbed her eyes, convinced she was hallucinating from too much late-night work. But when she looked again, the 4 baby dragons were still there, chirping softly and staying close to Luna as if she were their mother. Luna looked up at Sarah with what could only be described as pride, as if she had just presented the most wonderful gift imaginable. The baby dragons were each a different color. One was deep emerald green, another was sapphire blue, the third was ruby red, and the smallest was pearl white with silver accents. They moved with surprising grace for creatures so young, their tiny claws clicking softly on the wooden porch. Their wings, though small, had intricate patterns that reminded Sarah of stained glass windows. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. Dragons weren't real, everyone knew that. They existed only in fairy tales and fantasy movies. Yet here were 4 very real, very alive baby dragons sitting on her back porch, apparently brought home by her cat like some impossible adoption story. Luna meowed again and gently nudged the smallest dragon forward with her nose. The pearl-white baby looked up at Sarah with enormous golden eyes and made a sound somewhere between a purr and a tiny roar. It was the most adorable thing Sarah had ever heard. Despite the impossibility of the situation, as if sensing her confusion, Luna walked over to Sarah and rubbed against her legs in the way cats do when they want something. Then she returned to the babies and began grooming the green one with her rough tongue, just as she would a kitten. The baby dragon seemed to enjoy this attention, closing its eyes and making contented sounds. Sarah slowly knelt down, careful not to make any sudden movements. Up close, she could see that the baby dragons were breathing normally, their tiny chests rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Their scales weren't hard like she might have expected, but had a soft, almost velvet-like texture. When the blue one turned to look at her, she noticed its eyes held an intelligence that made her breath catch. The rational part of her mind insisted this couldn't be happening. Perhaps she had fallen asleep at her computer and was having the most vivid dream of her life. But the cool October air on her face, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and the very real warmth radiating from the tiny creatures all confirmed that this was actually happening. Luna meowed once more, and then did something that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. The cat's eyes began to glow with a soft amber light, and for just a moment Sarah could have sworn she saw Luna's reflection shimmer and change. Instead of a black cat, she glimpsed something larger, more majestic, with scales instead of fur and wings folded against a powerful body. The vision lasted only a second before Luna appeared normal again, but it was enough to make Sarah realize that her beloved pet had been hiding a secret far more incredible than she could have ever imagined. Luna wasn't just an unusual cat, she was something else entirely, something magical and ancient that had chosen to live as a simple house cat for reasons Sarah couldn't yet understand. As she sat there on her kitchen floor, surrounded by broken coffee mug pieces and faced with 4 baby dragons and a cat who might not be a cat at all, Sarah realized her quiet life in the cottage was about to change in ways she never could have anticipated. The biggest question now wasn't how this was possible, but what she was supposed to do with 4 baby dragons and the growing suspicion that Luna had been keeping the most extraordinary secret of all. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dancing shadows through the trees, while 4 baby dragons chirped softly on her porch, and a mysterious cat watched her with ancient knowing eyes. Sarah took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to help them no matter how impossible it all seemed. Sarah spent the rest of that morning in a daze, watching Luna care for the 4 baby dragons as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She had cleared a space in her living room, laying down old blankets and towels to create a comfortable area for the unusual family. The baby dragons seemed to adapt quickly to their new indoor environment, though they stayed close to Luna at all times. By afternoon, Sarah realized the babies were probably hungry. She had no idea what baby dragons ate, but Luna seemed to have that covered too. The cat disappeared through the pet door and returned an hour later with her mouth full of what looked like glowing berries. Sarah had never seen anything like them in the surrounding forest, but the baby dragons eagerly devoured the strange fruit, their scales brightening noticeably after eating. As the day progressed, Sarah found herself talking to Luna as if the cat could understand every word. "Where did you find them, Luna? And what exactly are you?" she asked while watching the babies play together on the blanket. The green one seemed to be the leader, always the first to explore new areas of the room. The blue one was more cautious, preferring to stay close to Luna. The red one was clearly the most energetic, attempting to fly with wings still too small to support its body. The pearl white one was the quiet observer, watching everything with those wise golden eyes. Luna responded by doing something even more surprising than bringing home baby dragons. She walked over to Sarah's computer, which was still open to the logo design project, and placed her paw deliberately on the keyboard. The screen flickered, and suddenly the design software was replaced by what looked like an ancient map. The image showed the surrounding forest in incredible detail, with glowing symbols marking various locations. Sarah leaned closer to the screen, her heart pounding. One symbol, shaped like a dragon's head, pulsed gently near what appeared to be a cave system about 5 miles north of her cottage. Another symbol, this one resembling a tree with silver leaves, marked a location even deeper in the forest. Most interesting of all was a symbol right where her cottage should be. It looked like a shield surrounded by protective runes. "Luna, how did you—" Sarah began, but her question was interrupted by a soft knock at her front door. Her blood turned cold. She lived far enough from town that unexpected visitors were extremely rare. Through the window, she could see a tall man in an expensive dark suit standing on her porch. He looked completely out of place in the rural setting, and something about his presence made the baby dragons huddle closer to Luna. Luna's fur stood on end, and she made a low warning sound that Sarah had never heard before. The cat positioned herself protectively in front of the babies, and her eyes began to glow with that same amber light Sarah had seen earlier. The map on the computer screen flickered and disappeared, returning to the normal design software. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to figure out what to do. She couldn't exactly hide 4 baby dragons, and Luna's protective stance suggested this visitor might not have good intentions. She made a quick decision and gathered the babies in a large laundry basket, covering them with a soft blanket. To her surprise, they seemed to understand the need for silence and stayed perfectly still. When Sarah opened the front door, the man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was probably in his 50s, with silver hair and pale gray eyes that seemed to look right through her. "Good afternoon, Miss Martinez. My name is Dr. Vincent Thorne. I'm a researcher with the Department of Unusual Wildlife Phenomena." Sarah had never heard of any such department, and something about the man's overly polite manner set off alarm bells in her mind. "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what you're looking for here. I haven't reported any unusual wildlife." Dr. Thorne's smile widened slightly. "No, of course not. But we have reason to believe that certain rare creatures might have been spotted in this area, perhaps brought here by local animals who don't understand the significance of what they've found." His eyes moved past Sarah, scanning the interior of her cottage. "We're simply conducting routine checks to ensure the safety of both the creatures and the community." Behind her, Sarah heard Luna make that low warning sound again, though she tried to cover it with a cough. The baby dragons remained silent under their blanket, but she could sense their tension even from across the room. I really haven't seen anything unusual, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Just the normal forest animals. Dr. Thorne stepped closer to the doorway, and Sarah noticed he was wearing a strange pendant around his neck. A silver disc with symbols that looked remarkably similar to the ones she had seen on the computer map. I wonder, Miss Martinez, if I might ask about your cat. Local reports suggest she's been seen in areas of the forest that are typically difficult to access. Sarah's protective instincts kicked in. Whatever this man wanted, she knew it wasn't good for Luna or the babies. Luna is just a normal house cat. She likes to explore, but there's nothing unusual about that. Of course, Dr. Thorne said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe her for a second. Well, if you do happen to notice anything out of the ordinary, please don't hesitate to contact us. He handed her a business card that was oddly warm to the touch and felt heavier than paper should. We're particularly interested in any creatures that might seem displaced from their natural habitat. After he left, Sarah locked the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She looked at the business card and gasped. Instead of normal text, the words seemed to shimmer and change as she watched. At first it read Department of Unusual Wildlife Phenomena, but as she stared, the words rearranged themselves to say Dragon Recovery Division, and then Magical Creature Containment Unit. Luna appeared at her feet, looking up with urgent eyes. The cat led her back to the computer, which once again displayed the mysterious map. This time new symbols were appearing, dark red dots that seemed to be moving through the forest, all heading in the direction of her cottage. Luna placed her paw on the screen, and suddenly Sarah understood. They were being hunted, and Dr. Thorne was just the beginning. The baby dragons peeked out from under their blanket, sensing the tension in the room. The pearl white one made a soft chirping sound that somehow conveyed both fear and determination. Sarah looked at Luna, then at the 4 tiny creatures who had somehow become her responsibility, and made another life-changing decision. They couldn't stay here, it wasn't safe anymore. That evening, as darkness fell over the forest, Sarah packed only the essentials into her hiking backpack. She had created a secure carrier for the baby dragons using a padded camera bag with air holes, and they seemed content to nestle together inside it. Luna paced nervously by the window, occasionally pausing to look out at the tree line where shadows seemed to move independently of the wind. The IKEO map on Sarah's computer had shown a safe path through the forest to what appeared to be some kind of sanctuary marked with protective symbols. She printed the route and tucked it into her jacket pocket, then shut down the computer and unplugged it. Something told her that Dr. Thorne and his people had ways of tracking technology, and she couldn't take any chances. Around midnight, Luna gave a soft meow that clearly meant it's time. Sarah shouldered her pack, secured the baby dragon carrier across her chest, and followed Luna out the back door into the cool October night. The moon was only a thin crescent, providing just enough light to see the forest path without being too visible to anyone who might be watching. Luna moved through the forest with surprising confidence for a house cat, leading Sarah along trails she never knew existed. The baby dragons remained quiet during the journey, though occasionally she felt them shifting positions inside their carrier. After about an hour of hiking, they reached a clearing where Luna suddenly stopped and looked back at Sarah with those glowing amber eyes. "What is it?" Sarah whispered. But her question was answered when Luna began to change before her eyes. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. Luna's small cat body stretched and grew, her black fur shifting to deep midnight scales that reflected the starlight. Her face elongated into an elegant dragon snout, and magnificent wings unfurled from her back. Within moments where Luna the cat had stood, there was now a beautiful dragon about the size of a large horse, with the same intelligent amber eyes Sarah had grown to love. The baby dragons began chirping excitedly from their carrier, recognizing their true mother. Luna, or rather the dragon who had been pretending to be Luna, lowered her head to Sarah's level and spoke in a voice like wind chimes mixed with distant thunder. "My name is Lunaria, and I owe you an explanation." Sarah sat heavily on a fallen log, struggling to process this revelation. "You can talk. You're a dragon. You've been living as my cat for 3 years. She laughed shakily. "I think I'm handling this better than I should be." Lunaria's dragon face managed something that might have been a smile. "You have dragon friend blood in your veins, Sarah Martinez. It's why you could see through the veils that hide magical creatures, and why you accepted my children so readily. Your great-grandmother was a dragon keeper in the old country, before such relationships were forced into hiding. The baby dragons were making increasingly insistent sounds, so Sarah opened their carrier and watched them tumble out to reunite with their mother. They climbed all over Lunaria's elegant form, chirping and purring with joy. The sight was so touching that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, despite everything strange that had happened. Dr. Thorne and his organization, Lunaria continued, they call themselves the Order of the Iron Scale. For centuries, they have hunted dragons and other magical creatures, claiming it's for the protection of humanity. In truth, they seek to capture and control us, to steal our magic for their own purposes. Sarah watched the green baby dragon attempt to climb onto Lunaria's head, its tiny claws finding purchase on the larger dragon's scales. But why did you come to me? Why live as a house cat? Lunaria's expression grew sad. 3 years ago, the Order discovered our nesting grounds in the mountains. They killed many of my kind and took our eggs to use in their experiments. I was pregnant and managed to escape, but I needed somewhere safe to have my children. Your cottage sits on ancient protected ground, a place where dragon magic is strong and their technology cannot easily penetrate. So you disguised yourself as a stray cat, Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. You've been protecting your eggs all this time, waiting for them to hatch. The gestation period for dragon eggs is 3 years when kept in magical stasis, Lunaria explained. I had to remain in animal form to maintain the spell that kept them safe. Only in the past few days did they finally hatch, which is why I could begin to reveal my true nature. Sarah looked at the 4 baby dragons, who were now playing a game that involved small puffs of colorful flame. The green one could produce tiny emerald sparks. The blue one made sapphire flames no bigger than a lighter flame. The red one's fire was indeed ruby-colored, and the pearl white one produced silver flames that seemed to heal small scratches on its siblings' scales. What happens now? Sarah asked. Dr. Thorne knows something is going on. He'll be back with more people. Lunaria nodded gravely. The Order has ways of tracking dragon magic, especially when young ones are learning to use their abilities. We cannot stay in any one place for long, but there is a sanctuary, hidden deep in the ancient forest where my kind still gather in secret. If we can reach it, my children will be safe to grow and learn. We? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. You are their first human friend, Sarah. In dragon tradition, that makes you family. But more than that, I need your help. The Order expects to hunt dragons, not a human woman traveling with her pets. Your presence will help disguise us as we travel. Sarah looked around the clearing, thinking of her cottage and her quiet life designing logos and websites. Then she looked at the baby dragons who had abandoned their game to listen to the conversation with surprising attention. The pearl white one had climbed into her lap and was looking up at her with those wise golden eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. How far is this sanctuary? She asked, and Lunaria's relief was visible even in dragon form. 2 days' journey through the deep forest, to places where few humans have ever walked. There will be dangers. The Order is not the only threat in these woods. Ancient things wake when dragons pass, and not all of them are friendly to either our kind or yours. Sarah stroked the pearl dragon's soft scales and made her decision. Then we better get moving. These little ones need to get somewhere safe, and I have a feeling Dr. Thorne won't wait long before coming back with reinforcements. Lunaria lowered herself to the ground. Climb on my back, Sarah. Tonight we fly to the deep forest, where the real journey begins. As Sarah settled herself between Lunaria's shoulder blades with the baby dragons secure in their carrier, she realized her life as a simple graphic designer was officially over. Now she was part of something ancient and magical, something worth protecting no matter what the cost. Flying on Lunaria's back was nothing like Sarah had imagined from movies or books. The dragon's movements were smooth and powerful, her wings beating in a steady rhythm that created its own wind song. Below them, the forest stretched endlessly in all directions, illuminated by patches of moonlight that filtered through the canopy. Sarah held tightly to the baby dragon carrier, amazed by how naturally they seemed to take to flight, their tiny heads poking out to watch the world pass beneath them. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Lunaria began to descend toward a section of forest that looked somehow older and wilder than the areas around Sarah's cottage. The trees here were massive, their trunks so wide that several people holding hands couldn't encircle them. Moss hung like curtains from their branches, and strange flowers that glowed with their own soft light dotted the forest floor. They landed in a clearing beside a stream that sparkled with an unusual silver light. "We rest here until dawn," Lunaria said, settling herself near the water. "The babies need to drink and eat, and we need to discuss what lies ahead." Sarah helped the baby dragons out of their carrier, watching in wonder as they immediately went to the stream and began drinking. The water seemed to make their scales glow brighter, and their movements became more energetic. "What's special about this water?" she asked. "It flows from the heart spring, the source of all dragon magic in this region," Lunaria explained. "My children were born to drink from these waters, and it will help them grow strong." She lowered her great head to drink as well, and Sarah noticed that the silver light in the water intensified around Lunaria's muzzle. While the dragons drank and played in the shallow stream, Sarah explored the immediate area. She discovered that the glowing flowers were actually tiny mushrooms that pulsed with bioluminescent light, creating a natural fairy tale atmosphere. More interesting still were the carved stones she found half buried under centuries of fallen leaves. The symbols on them matched the ones she had seen on Dr. Thorne's pendant and the computer map. "Dragon markers," Lunaria confirmed when Sarah showed her the stones. "This forest has been a refuge for my kind for over 1,000 years. The stones mark safe paths and warn of dangers, but they also mean the Order knows of this place, even if they cannot easily enter it." As if summoned by her words, a low howling echoed through the forest, unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. It sounded almost human, but with an underlying growl that made her skin crawl. The baby dragons immediately huddled together, their playful chirping replaced by worried whimpers. Lunaria's head snapped up, her amber eyes scanning the tree line. "Shadow hounds," she said grimly. "The Order's tracking beasts. They must have picked up our scent from the cottage, and what do we do?" Sarah asked, automatically moving closer to the baby dragons. "We cannot outrun them in the air with the babies so young, and we cannot hide our scent now that they have it. But there is another way." Lunaria looked at Sarah with an expression that might have been apologetic. "You must trust me completely, and you must not be afraid no matter what you see." Before Sarah could ask what she meant, Lunaria began to glow with that same amber light, but much brighter than before. The light enveloped all of them, and Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation throughout her body. When the light faded, she looked down at herself and gasped. Her hands were no longer human hands, but dragon claws covered in scales that shifted color like an opal. Her reflection in the stream showed a face that was still recognizably hers, but with dragon features. Elongated and elegant, with eyes that glowed with inner fire. She had wings folded against her back and a long, graceful tail. "Temporary transformation," Lunaria explained quickly. "The shadow hounds hunt by scent and magical signature. If you smell and feel like a dragon, they will be confused long enough for us to escape. The baby's natural camouflage will handle the rest." Indeed, the baby dragons were already fading from view, their scales shifting to match the colors and patterns of their surroundings. Only their eyes remained visible, like 4 sets of jeweled stars floating in the darkness. The howling came again, much closer this time. Through the trees, Sarah could see dark shapes moving with unnatural speed and coordination. The shadow hounds were the size of wolves but moved more like liquid darkness, their eyes glowing red in the night. "Stay close to me," Lunaria whispered. "Move like a dragon, confident, purposeful, predatory. You are not prey hiding in fear. You are a creature to be respected and avoided." Sarah found that the dragon transformation had changed more than just her appearance. Her senses were sharper, her movements more graceful and powerful. She could smell the approaching hounds, hear their breathing, and the soft pad of their paws on the forest floor. Most importantly, she could sense the baby dragons even though they were invisible, their presence warm and comforting in her mind. The first shadow hound emerged from the tree line and stopped abruptly when it saw 2 adult dragons and caught their scent. It tilted its head, confusion evident in its glowing red eyes. 2 more hounds appeared beside it, equally puzzled. They had been tracking 1 dragon and some human scent, but now they found 2 dragons and no humans at all. Lunaria took a step forward, and Sarah was amazed to hear her make a sound she had never heard before. A deep, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the very earth itself. The shadow hounds backed away uncertain. These were hunting dogs, bred and trained to track and corner fleeing prey, not to confront aggressive dragons who showed no fear. After a tense standoff that lasted several minutes, the hounds began to retreat, Their mission apparently failed. They had lost the scent trail they were following, and facing 2 adult dragons was not what they had been sent to do. When the last of the shadow hounds had disappeared into the forest, Lunaria let out a long breath. "Well done, Sarah, you have good dragon instincts." Sarah looked at her clawed hands, still amazed by the transformation. "How long will this last?" "Only until sunrise. The magic is too complex to maintain in daylight without years of practice." Lunaria began gathering the baby dragons, who were slowly becoming visible again, but it may have bought us the time we need to reach the next safe haven. As they prepared to continue their journey, Sarah realized that she was changing in ways that went beyond the temporary physical transformation. 3 days ago, she had been afraid of spiders in her bathtub. Now she was calmly planning how to protect 4 baby dragons from an organization that hunted magical creatures for a living. "Lunaria," she said, as they took to the air again, "what exactly is dragon friend blood? You mentioned my great-grandmother. In the old days, before the modern world made magic hide in shadows, there were humans who served as bridges between our worlds. They could partially transform, as you just did, and they helped protect dragon young when needed. The bloodline carries magic that can be awakened under the right circumstances." Sarah looked down at the baby dragons nestled securely in their carrier, their scales dim with sleep, but still beautiful in the moonlight. "Does that mean I'm becoming something more than human?" Lunaria's laugh was like silver bells in the wind. "Sarah Martinez, you stopped being merely human the moment you opened your door to 4 baby dragons and decided to protect them. Everything else is just details." Dawn broke slowly through the ancient canopy, painting the forest in shades of gold and green that seemed almost magical in their intensity. Sarah's dragon transformation had faded with the first light, leaving her feeling oddly empty, as if she had lost a sense she never knew she possessed. The baby dragons were more active now, chirping softly and trying to climb out of their carrier to explore this new section of forest. They had spent the remaining hours of darkness flying deeper into the wilderness, finally landing near what Lunaria called a waystone, a tall pillar of crystalline rock that hummed with ancient power. The area around it felt different from the rest of the forest, more alive somehow, as if the very air was infused with magic. "We are halfway to the sanctuary," Lunaria announced, stretching her wings in the morning light. "But the most dangerous part of our journey lies ahead. Beyond this point, the forest belongs to the eldest. Things, creatures that were old when the first dragons learned to fly. Sarah was helping the baby dragons drink from a small pool beside the waystone when she noticed something troubling. The green dragon, who had been the most energetic and curious of the 4, seemed sluggish and kept making small, distressed sounds. Its emerald scales had lost some of their luster, and it wasn't interested in the magical water that had revitalized the others. "Lunaria, something's wrong with the green one," Sarah called, gently lifting the baby dragon from the pool. As soon as she touched it, she could feel that its body temperature was too high and its breathing was rapid and shallow. Lunaria was beside them in an instant, her great head lowering to examine her child. Her amber eyes filled with worry as she gently nuzzled the baby dragon. "Flame fever," she said, her voice tight with concern. "It sometimes affects young dragons when they are exposed to too much stress or unfamiliar magic. The transformation magic I used on you last night may have triggered it." "What does that mean? Is it serious?" Sarah asked, cradling the green dragon carefully. The little creature looked up at her with dimmed eyes and made a soft pleading sound that broke her heart. "If left untreated, yes, but there is a cure. Moon-silver moss that grows only in the deepest parts of these woods in places where starlight has touched the earth for centuries uninterrupted. The problem is that such places are usually guarded by things that do not welcome visitors." Sarah looked at the 3 healthy baby dragons, who were clustering around their sick sibling with obvious concern. The pearl white one was making soft, comforting sounds while the blue and red ones pressed close as if trying to share their warmth. "Then we go get the moss. Whatever it takes." Lunaria studied Sarah's determined face for a long moment. "The path to the moon-silver groves leads through the territory of the Forest King, an ancient guardian spirit that has protected these woods since before humans learned to make fire. He does not trust easily, and he has good reason to be suspicious of anyone traveling with dragons. The Order has sent false petitioners before, hoping to gain access to the sanctuary. But we're not from the Order," Sarah protested. "Surely he'll be able to tell the difference. The Forest King judges by actions, not words. He will test us, and the tests are not always survivable. Lunaria looked at her sick child, and Sarah could see the internal battle between maternal protectiveness and the need to reach safety. But you are right. We have no choice. They set off immediately, with Lunaria carrying Sarah and the baby dragons through increasingly dense and otherworldly forest. The trees here were so old that their trunks had grown together in places, creating natural archways and tunnels. Flowers the size of dinner plates bloomed in impossible colors, and creatures that looked like living jewels flitted between the branches. After an hour of flight, they reached an area where the forest floor was carpeted with silver moss that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Lunaria landed cautiously, her posture alert and respectful. This is the outer boundary of the Forest King's domain. From here we walk. The moment their feet touched the moss-covered ground, the forest around them seemed to shift and change. Paths appeared where none had existed moments before, winding between trees that moved aside to create passages. The air itself felt ancient and watchful, as if every leaf and stone was reporting their presence to some vast intelligence. They had been walking for perhaps 20 minutes when the path opened into a clearing dominated by the largest tree Sarah had ever seen. Its trunk was so massive that it could have housed a small city, and its branches reached so high they disappeared into clouds. More impressive still was the figure sitting on a throne carved from the tree's roots. The Forest King was both beautiful and terrifying. His form seemed to shift between human and tree, sometimes appearing as a tall man with bark-like skin and leaves for hair, other times as a living part of the great tree itself. His eyes were the deep green of old-growth forests, and when he spoke, his voice carried the sound of wind through ancient branches. "So," he said, his gaze moving from Lunaria to Sarah to the baby dragons, "the last daughter of the mountain clans comes seeking sanctuary, accompanied by a newly awakened dragon friend and 4 hatchlings, one of whom burns with fever that will claim its life before another day passes." Sarah stepped forward before Lunaria could speak. "We need moon silver moss to heal the baby. I know we're strangers here, and I know you have reason to be careful about who you trust. But please, don't let an innocent creature die because of your caution." The Forest King's expression didn't change, but Sarah felt as though she were being examined on a level far deeper than physical appearance. Interesting. The human speaks for the dragons rather than herself. Tell me, Sarah Martinez of the Dragon Friend bloodline, what would you sacrifice to save this child that is not your own? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah looked at the green dragon, now barely conscious in its makeshift carrier, then back at the ancient guardian. "Anything, everything, my life if necessary. And yet you barely know these creatures. 3 days ago they were strangers to you. Why should their lives matter more than your own?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she tried to put her feelings into words. Because they're innocent. Because they're beautiful and magical, and the world would be a darker place without them. Because sometimes you don't choose who becomes family. They just become family, and then you protect them no matter what. The Forest King was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying her face. Then, to Sarah's surprise, he began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes mixed with rustling leaves. 3,000 years I have guarded these woods, and rarely have I heard such a simple, honest answer. "Very well, dragon friend. Your test is this. In my grove grows enough moonsilver moss to heal a dozen fever-struck hatchlings. But the grove can only be entered by one person, and that person will face their deepest fear made manifest. Succeed, and you save not only the hatchling, but prove yourself worthy of my protection on your journey to the sanctuary. Fail, and you may never leave the grove at all." Sarah looked at Lunaria, who nodded gravely, then at the baby dragons. The green one's breathing was becoming more labored, and she knew they were running out of time. "I'll do it." The Forest King stood, his form shifting until he appeared fully human, though his eyes remained ancient and knowing. "Follow me, brave one. Let us see what you are truly made of." The grove entrance looked deceptively peaceful, just an archway formed by 2 trees whose branches had grown together over countless years. Beyond it, Sarah could see a circular clearing carpeted with the most beautiful moss she had ever seen. It glowed with soft silver light like captured moonbeams, and even from a distance she could feel its healing properties calling to her. The Forest King placed a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder as she approached the archway. "Remember, what you face inside will not be real in the way you understand reality, but the danger is very real indeed. Your fear will try to convince you to give up, to run, to choose yourself over the dragon child. You must not listen. Sarah nodded, though her heart was pounding. She looked back at Lunaria, who had transformed back into her cat form to better comfort her sick child. The green dragon was barely breathing now, its tiny chest rising and falling in irregular gasps. There was no more time for fear or hesitation. The moment Sarah stepped through the archway, the world changed completely. Instead of the peaceful grove, she found herself standing in the ruins of her childhood home, the house where she had lived until she was 8 years old. But this wasn't the happy version from her memories. This was the house as it had been on the worst day of her life. Smoke was pouring from the kitchen windows, and she could hear screaming from inside. Her parents' voices calling for help, calling for her. The fire that had taken their lives and left her an orphan was happening all over again. But this time she was old enough to do something about it. All she had to do was run inside and save them. Sarah took a step toward the burning house, then stopped. This wasn't real. It was her deepest fear. The guilt she had carried for 20 years over surviving when her parents hadn't. The Forest King had warned her that her fear would try to make her choose herself over the dragon. But this was the opposite. Her fear was trying to make her abandon the dragon to chase a past she couldn't change. "You're not real," she said aloud, though tears were streaming down her face. "My parents are gone and I can't save them. But I can save the dragon baby who needs me right now." The burning house flickered and changed, becoming a laboratory filled with cages. Inside the cages were hundreds of magical creatures, dragons, unicorns, phoenixes, and others she couldn't identify. All of them were crying out in pain and fear. In the center of the room stood Dr. Thorne, holding the green dragon baby who was now completely limp and barely alive. "You're too late, Sarah," Dr. Thorne said with his cold smile. "While you wandered around in fantasies, the dragon child died. All because you weren't strong enough, smart enough, fast enough to save it. Just like you weren't enough to save your parents." This vision felt more real than the first, and for a moment Sarah's resolve wavered. What if she really was too late? What if the baby dragon had died while she stood here facing imaginary fears? The thought was almost unbearable. But then she remembered the Forest King's words about choosing family, and she knew what she had to do. She walked straight toward the image of Dr. Thorne, even as he laughed and held the limp dragon higher. "You can't hurt what I protect," she said firmly. "And you can't make me believe lies about what I can and cannot do." The laboratory dissolved around her like smoke, and suddenly she was standing in the real grove, surrounded by silver moss that pulsed gently with healing light. But she wasn't alone. Standing at the far end of the grove was another figure, herself but older and sadder, wearing the clothes she had been wearing the day her parents died. "You always run away," the other Sarah said. "When things get hard, when people need you, you hide in your little cottage and design pretty pictures on your computer. You couldn't save mom and dad. You couldn't make a relationship work. You couldn't even keep a normal job. What makes you think you can save magical creatures from an organization that's been hunting them for centuries?" This was the hardest fear of all because part of it was true. Sarah had been hiding from life, choosing safety and solitude over connections that might lead to pain. But looking at her other self, she realized something important. "You're right about some of that," she said calmly. "I have been hiding. I have been afraid of getting hurt again. But that doesn't mean I'm weak or worthless. It means I'm human. And being human doesn't disqualify me from doing extraordinary things when people I love need me." She walked toward her other self, who began backing away with a look of surprise. "I choose to love Lunaria and her babies, even though it's dangerous. I choose to protect them, even though I might fail. I choose to be brave, even though I'm terrified. Because that's what love means. Showing up anyway." The other Sarah smiled then, and her expression filled with pride instead of judgment. "I was wondering when you'd figure that out," she said. And then she faded away like morning mist. Sarah found herself alone in the grove with the moon's silver moss. She quickly gathered as much as she could carry, stuffing it into her jacket pockets until they bulged with silver light. The moss felt warm and alive in her hands, and she could sense its healing power growing stronger as she collected it. When she emerged from the grove, she found Lunaria still in cat form, curled protectively around the green dragon baby. The other 3 babies were pressed close to their sibling, their own scales dim with worry. The Forest King was nowhere to be seen, but Sarah felt his presence watching from the great tree. I got it, she said, dropping to her knees beside the tiny family. She pulled out a handful of the glowing moss and wasn't sure what to do with it next. How do I? Lunaria transformed back into her dragon form and gently took some of the moss in her claws. She crushed it into a fine powder that sparkled like stardust, then mixed it with water from a small stream that ran through the clearing. The resulting paste glowed with soft silver light. Working together, they applied the moon-silver medicine to the green dragon's scales, paying special attention to its chest and throat. The effect was almost immediate. The baby's labored breathing eased, its fever broke, and the dullness left its emerald scales. Within minutes, it was lifting its head and making curious sounds at its worried siblings. The Forest King materialized beside them, now appearing as a kindly old man with bark-textured skin and leaves in his hair. Well done, dragon friend. You have proven yourself worthy of protection and aid. He gestured toward the forest, and Sarah saw that new paths had appeared, glowing with soft light. These will lead you safely to the sanctuary. The Order's creatures cannot follow where these paths go. As they prepared to continue their journey, Sarah felt different than she had just hours before. The baby dragons were all healthy and active, chirping happily as they explored their carrier. Lunaria's relief was visible in every line of her elegant form, and Sarah herself felt like she had found something she didn't even know she had lost: the ability to be brave when it mattered most. Thank you, she said to the Forest King. But he was already fading back into his tree form. Thank yourself. Sarah Martinez, his voice echoed from the ancient wood. You chose love over fear. That is the rarest magic of all. The path to the sanctuary led through a landscape that seemed to exist outside of normal time and space. Ancient trees with silver bark lined the glowing trail, their leaves chiming softly in the breeze like wind bells. The air itself felt different here, cleaner and more alive, charged with magic that made Sarah's skin tingle, and the baby dragons more playful than she had ever seen them. As they walked, Lunaria shared stories of the sanctuary they were approaching. It is called Drakmor, the Last Haven. For over 1,000 years it has been hidden from human eyes, protected by magic older than recorded history. Dragons from all over the world come here when they need healing, wisdom, or simply a place where they can be themselves without fear. The baby dragons were fascinated by everything around them, their heads constantly turning to watch glowing butterflies that seemed to be made of pure light, or flowers that sang in harmonious tones when the wind touched them. The green dragon, fully recovered from its fever, was particularly energetic, trying to catch the light butterflies with tiny pounces that made Sarah laugh despite her amazement at their surroundings. After several hours of walking, they reached the top of a hill, and Sarah got her first glimpse of the dragon sanctuary. The sight took her breath away. Spread out in the valley below was what could only be described as a dragon city, but unlike any city humans had ever built. Crystalline spires grew from the earth like enormous geodes, their faceted surfaces reflecting and refracting light into rainbow patterns. Bridges of woven silver connected floating platforms where dragons of all sizes and colors could be seen going about their daily lives. At the center of it all was a massive tree that dwarfed even the Forest King's dwelling, its trunk hollow and carved into countless chambers and passages. Dragons perched on its branches like living ornaments, some sleeping in the eternal afternoon sun, others engaged in what appeared to be complex aerial dances. Welcome to Drakmor, Lunaria said softly, her voice filled with emotion. My children's true home. As they descended into the valley, Sarah began to appreciate the incredible diversity of dragons that called this place home. There were tiny ones no bigger than hummingbirds, darting between the flowers in elaborate gardens. Others were massive, easily the size of buildings, moving with surprising grace despite their enormous bulk. Some had traditional Western dragon features like Lunaria, while others looked more Eastern with long, serpentine bodies and flowing manes. The baby dragons in Sarah's carrier were chittering excitedly, recognizing the scents and sounds of their ancestral home. Other dragons began to notice their arrival, and word spread quickly through the community. By the time they reached the central plaza, a small crowd had gathered. An ancient dragon with scales like polished obsidian and eyes that held the wisdom of millennia approached them. This was clearly someone of great importance. Other dragons moved aside respectfully as she passed, and even Lunaria bowed her head in greeting. Elder Zephyra, Lunaria said formally. I have returned with my children, and I bring with me a dragon friend who has proven herself worthy of our trust. Elder Zephyra studied Sarah with those ancient eyes, and Sarah felt like she was being examined not just physically but spiritually, as if the elder dragon could see every decision she had ever made. Finally, the ancient dragon smiled, an expression both terrifying and wonderful on such a majestic face. Sarah Martinez, Elder Zephyra said, her voice like distant thunder. Your reputation precedes you. The Forest King sent word of your courage and sacrifice. Drakmor welcomes you as both friend and family. The formal greeting was interrupted by the baby dragons, who had finally managed to escape their carrier and were now tumbling around Sarah's feet, chirping and showing off for the gathered adults. The sight of 4 healthy, playful hatchlings brought visible joy to the community. Apparently, new births were rare and precious among dragonkind. Over the following days, Sarah learned more about dragon society than she had ever imagined possible. Dragons were natural teachers and philosophers, with some individuals dedicating centuries to the study of magic, astronomy, or the healing arts. The baby dragons were enrolled in hatchling schools where they learned to control their abilities, alongside others their age, while Sarah was given a comfortable dwelling in one of the crystal spires and invited to observe any aspect of dragon life that interested her. What surprised her most was how much the dragons valued her human perspective. They had lived for so long and seen so much that they sometimes struggled with problems that seemed obvious to someone with a shorter lifespan and different way of thinking. Sarah found herself serving as an unofficial consultant, helping resolve disputes and offering suggestions that no dragon had considered. But it was the baby dragons who truly made Drakmor feel like home. Each evening, they would return from their lessons full of stories about their new friends and the amazing things they had learned. The green dragon was excelling at elemental magic. The blue one showed natural talent for healing. The red one was gifted at flying and aerial acrobatics, and the pearl white one seemed to have inherited its mother's wisdom and empathy. 3 weeks after their arrival, Elder Zephyra approached Sarah with an unexpected proposition. The Order of the Iron Scale grows bolder in their attacks on our people, she said. They have developed new technologies that can penetrate some of our oldest protections. We need someone who can move in the human world, someone who understands both our ways and theirs. Sarah looked out at the beautiful sanctuary, thinking of the peaceful life she could have here among beings who had accepted her as family. Then she thought of dragons like Lunaria, forced to hide in animal form to protect their young, and others who might be captured or killed by Dr. Thorne's organization. What exactly are you asking me to do? She said, though she suspected she already knew. Become our ambassador to the human world. Help us identify others with dragon-friend bloodlines who might serve as allies. Work to expose the Order's crimes and protect young dragons who haven't yet found their way to safety. Elder Zephyr's expression was serious but hopeful. It would be dangerous work and you would have to leave Drakmor for long periods, but you would be helping to build a bridge between our peoples that could change the world. Sarah looked at Lunaria, who was watching the conversation with interest but no pressure. Then she looked at the 4 baby dragons, who were practicing coordinated flying with a group of other youngsters. They were safe now, happy and thriving in their true home. But how many other dragon babies were out there, vulnerable and unprotected? I'll need to be able to come back here regularly, she said finally. And I'll need training in defensive magic if I'm going to be going up against the Order directly. Elder Zephyra's smile could have lit up the entire valley. Of course. Welcome to the Dragon Guard, Sarah Martinez. May your courage be a light in dark places. As Sarah began her new training, she often thought about how much her life had changed since that Tuesday morning when Luna had brought home 4 baby dragons. She had lost her quiet, safe existence but gained something infinitely more valuable, a purpose that mattered, and a family that spanned 2 species. The baby dragons, now officially her adopted nephew and nieces, visited her every evening to share their adventures and practice the coordination exercises she was learning. Sometimes, when they all fell asleep together in a pile of warm scales and gentle breathing, Sarah marveled at the impossible path that had led her here. She had thought she was rescuing them, but it turned out they had been rescuing her all along. From loneliness, from fear, from a life that was safe but empty. Now her life was dangerous but full, challenging but meaningful. And when the Order of the Iron Scale made their next move against dragonkind, They would find themselves facing not just ancient magic and dragon wisdom, but a determined human woman who had learned that family was worth fighting for, no matter how impossible the odds might seem.